Hi, my name is John Moore, and I am a shamanic practitioner from the state of Maine in the US. And today, I want to talk to you about evil entities and demonic spirits and dark spirits and all of those sort of things. This is a topic that comes up from time to time. And if you follow me at all on social media and stuff, you know that I do a lot of podcast and radio appearances and stuff like that. I love talking about shamanism. People contact me to talk about things, a broad range of topics within shamanism, and sometimes it includes paranormal stuff. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, I had 2 interviews, one during the day and one really late at night, 10 to midnight my time. So 2-hour interview where we talked all about shamanism and the paranormal and all these things. In both of those interviews, the interviewers asked me if I ever encountered evil spirits, dark energy, demons, demonic energy. There are different ways of putting this terminology. So I wanted to cover that. And I wanted to talk about it from a shamanic viewpoint, but clearly this viewpoint is my own because there's a couple of things going on here. One is that shamanism is cross-cultural as a set of practices, as a little, there's a worldview involved with it. There's an archetype. There's a shaman archetype. These are cross-cultural things, but I come from a culture, as do people in Africa and people in Siberia and people in the UK and people in, everywhere. People come from a culture. In fact, we all probably come from multiple cultures. Shamanism is always filtered through the culture that it comes out of. So, the word shaman, came into English from German and Russian, and before that it was from a tribe in Siberia, and before that it might have been Sanskrit or Chinese or all of these things, but there are different words for the term shaman. We just happen to not have another word for it in English, so we use that word, which has been around for 300 years or so. And so the question is, do I run into evil spirits in my work? And I have to kind of pause and sometimes ask, what do you mean by that? So there's this concept, there's this idea that there are good spirits and evil spirits, and maybe some people believe in neutral spirits, and this is a very binary view of reality, that good and evil, black and white, and this comes from a quite an old viewpoint, certainly prevalent in sort of the Abrahamic religions, right, where certain things are forbidden, and that sort of thing, and they're cultural. These are cultural ideas. I'm sorry if I'm offending you by saying this, but these things aren't absolutes. Good and evil aren't absolutes, even within a particular, culture or set of spiritual beliefs or that sort of thing. Let me give you an example. So I went to a number of Christian churches growing up, and my grandmother was very active in Christian Science, and I went to a Methodist church for a lot of my childhood and stuff. So I'm going to talk primarily from a Christian perspective, and I am not speaking for all Christians, all Christian faiths, and I am not bashing Christianity at all, or anybody's individual faith or spirit. I'm just talking about how things are culture-based and how they change over time. Okay? So, in many forms of Christianity, and there are about, 14,000 different sects of Christianity identified in the world today, things have changed significantly over the years. If you look back to the origins of the Christian church, they were Roman. So Roman Catholicism essentially was the original branch of the church that still survives. There were other Christian branches that were frankly wiped out by the Romans, and by the church that sprung up about that, the Cathars, the Gnostics, anybody who was considered heretical. And in the 4th century, a bunch of guys, they were all guys, got together and voted on what books would be included in the Bible, whether or not Jesus was God or not. All of these things were voted on by a bunch of guys, none of whom were around when Jesus was around. And so those ideas were set in stone for a while. But then, obviously there was a, Protestant Reformation and all kinds of stuff. Up until quite recent history, all Catholic Mass had to be performed in Latin. That was a rule. That's no longer a rule. In some cultures, in some forms of Christianity, it was illegal for lay people to read the Bible. That's not a rule anymore. These things were considered bad, evil, that sort of thing. We won't even talk about like slavery and how women were treated and how Native Americans were treated. There's all kinds of stuff going on there that will show you that even within, Christianity is not a monoculture. The United States is not a monoculture. I don't know that monocultures really exist, maybe except for very isolated tribes in the world. They don't really exist. They're overlapping cultures. And the ideas about what constitutes evil certainly are flexible. And this might be news to you. If you grew up in one of these religions, you might say, well, we have the 10 Commandments, and violating those are evil. Thou shalt not kill. Certainly, I can agree to that. I can agree to the fact that killing is not a great thing. Is it evil? Is it against the will of God? Is it, however we define evil? So, we have this rule. We have the thou shalt not kill. How many people have been killed in religious wars? How many people were burned at the stake, hung, or crushed under stone for being witches by people who are representing a religion that has as its main rule, thou shalt not kill. So the idea that these things have been literally set in stone, since the idea was that Moses came down from the mountain with these things carved into tablets of stone, but figuratively set in stone, is just not true. And I'm sorry if you feel like I'm poking fun at anybody's faith. I'm not. I'm just pointing out a fact that throughout time people have applied these rules very differently. And if you go back, and there are people who are very Orthodox Jewish that follow a lot of the old rules, eating kosher for one, not mixing certain kinds of foods or doing things on the Sabbath and that sort of thing. So those 6,000-year-old or however rules are still followed by some people, but not everybody. Right? So even within that faith, the application of the rule changes. So this is just to point out that things are not always as black and white as they seem. It is very easy. It is intellectually simpler, lazy, we might say, to believe that we can just very easily categorize things. So let's talk about evil spirits and demons and that sort of thing. So what constitutes an evil spirit? So again, there's this black and white view that comes out of a very specific historical practice that there are good spirits and bad spirits. Angels and demons, if you were. But even the word demon comes from a Greek word that just means spirit. And in ancient Greece, you had not good and evil, but you had helpful spirits and harmful spirits. And I actually think that's probably a better way of thinking about it. So you had spirits that might make you sick, or you had spirits that protected your home. And those were called demons. The word demon comes from that. When the Romans came in and enforced Christianity on everybody and squashed paganism, one of the things they did was they turned old gods into devils and demons, and they turned spirits into diabolical, evil things. And this was to stamp out paganism. And I'm sorry if you don't think that's true, but it is 100% verifiable history. This is exactly what happened. And so the word demon came to mean the opposite of angel. So angels were these, beings that helped out God and helped create the universe. And I'm not saying I don't believe in angels. I do. I think they're a different order of spirit, but demons don't have the same meaning in every culture. And they don't throughout history. So it's not like, since the beginning of time, there have been these evil spirits called demons that are malevolent towards human beings for some reason. This is a new viewpoint. This viewpoint is less than 2,000 years old. I realize that might not seem new, but human history is maybe a couple million years old. And, civilization started something we don't know 100% because it could have been, there probably have been other civilizations that got wiped out by natural disasters. But the civilizations we know about started about 10,000 years ago. So demons have only been evil spirits, considered evil spirits, for a fifth of that history. So, but let's just say, we'll throw aside the word demon and we'll just talk about spirits and dark spirits. And there's this whole, dark versus light thing, again, polar opposites. And the world is much grayer than that. The world in general is much grayer than that. Is there evil? I think so, but I have my own definition of that. It's not just malevolent. It's definitely malevolence is a part of evil, but somebody who is sociopathic or psychopathic, who takes pleasure in harming others, that sort of thing, that kind of stuff is evil. We can agree that genocide is evil, right? Complete disregard for other human beings as human beings. Could we agree that polluting the environment is evil? I don't know. I drive a car. I live in a house that burns oil for heat. I participate in activities that are polluting the environment. Even this video has been made using electricity that might have been generated by burning propane. I live in a house that is partially wood and was manufactured by cutting down trees. So is that evil? I don't know. I don't think I'm evil. I don't take pleasure in those things, but it is a necessary part of my reality. To eat, things have to die. Even if I'm a vegan, I have to kill plants. And in shamanism, plants are sentient spirits. So to consume them, for me this body to continue living, other things have to die. Do I take pleasure in the death or suffering of other things? I do not. Okay. So this is kind of where I might draw the line a little bit. So, I think, going back to Greek paganism, I think the distinction between harmful spirits and helpful spirits is a big one and probably a more useful one than dark or light spirits or evil spirits or, whatever. Because causing harm is not necessarily, I might cause somebody harm, but not intended. I might step on somebody's foot in an elevator. I've done that. I'm a little bit klutzy like that. I've done that several times in my life, stepped on somebody's foot getting into an elevator. That is a minor harm that I caused to somebody, but I didn't have the intention. I didn't get into the elevator thinking, hey, I'm gonna stomp on somebody's foot and laugh about it. Because that's hilarious. That is a lot of fun. So in that way, there are also spirits that can cause harm to us that don't intend it. There are stuck spirits, there are suffering spirits that don't intend on causing harm to us, but their actions are harmful and they don't necessarily realize this. I look at it like this. If I go out into the jungles in Asia, there's a potential in some parts of Asia, there's a potential I might get eaten by a tiger. Is the tiger evil? Or is it just doing what tigers do? It's obviously causing harm to me. It's killing this body and devouring it. But that's what tigers do. Is the tiger taking pleasure? Is the tiger going, I'm gonna make this guy suffer and whatever? I don't think so. I don't think tigers do that. They do what they do to survive and all those sorts of things. So there are spirits, lots of different types of spirits in the world that have different motivations, and some of them can be harmful and some of them can be incredibly helpful. In shamanism, we work with helping spirits all the time. It's one of the main practices that we do is we build relationships with helping spirits. So are there spirits out there that are absolutely malevolent, that take pleasure or derive something, some benefit from intentionally causing harm? Sure, absolutely. In the same way that there are human beings that do the same thing. Could we consider them evil, dark demons, yada, yada, yada? I suppose so. However, most cases of spirits causing harm that I have been involved with, it's been unintentional. Even cases of possession, and I have training in depossession and, have worked with people who had possessing beings attached to them. First of all, possession is incredibly rare. I realize there are some shamanic practitioners out there who will tell you that everybody is possessed all the time. That has not been my experience. I have a very different experience of the world. So take it for what it is. So everybody, in my opinion, is not possessed. And the vast majority of people that I've run into that have possessing beings sort of attached to them, they're kind of like hitchhikers. They're kind of, they're not meaning to cause harm, but their actions do cause harm. Spirits can sometimes be attracted to people for different reasons. I have brought hitchhikers home sometimes from doing shamanic work and had to politely ask them to leave. But when you do this kind of work, sometimes you light up and spirits understand that you can communicate with them and they kind of glom onto you. Sort of like a drowning person. If you were swimming out to save a drowning person, they might climb onto you and you both might drown. That's not their intention. They're not trying to drown both of you. They're just trying to do what they can out of desperation to save themselves. So by and large, the world is not full of demons ready to pounce on people. That's not my experience. And I travel in the spirit world daily, and I work with people with all kinds of complaints and things they come to me with, and I work with students, and it's just hasn't been my experience. I do want to talk a little bit about what happens in some indigenous cultures as well. I'm aware that in some indigenous cultures, I know of some in Africa. There may be some in the Americas for sure, where shamans regularly exorcise spirits from people as a form of shamanic healing. I can't say for sure what's going on there. Is that a thing? Are these people actually being possessed by quote unquote demons? I don't know that demons are even a concept. They might be ancestral spirits. They might be spirits of animals that are around. And they might belong to a culture that has been around for thousands of years, that has a history with a specific type of spirit or spirit animal or ancestral stuff or warfare or all kinds of things that could have gone on that attract spirits to these people that aren't angels cast down from heaven into the pits of hell that are coming up to take over the souls of humans to build an army for Satan, yada, yada, yada. And, and I don't really mean to offend anybody. And I realize that, speaking that way is sort of taking some people's beliefs lightly. I realize some people put a lot of stock in this stuff. I just have a really different belief system that comes from experience. It comes from spending years working with this stuff, working with spirits, working with people who are, either think they're possessed or are actually have possessing beings attached to them, or have houses that are being haunted. Another thing that comes up for me very frequently when I talk on these sort of paranormal podcasts is, they'll talk about seeing shadow beings, and they must be evil because they're in shadow and they're dark. And I'm like, well, did the shadow beings harm you? Well, they scared me. Okay, sure, but if I walked around the corner too fast and you weren't expecting me, I would startle you too. Does that make me evil? And so very frequently what people are experiencing when they see shadow beings is they're just experiencing spiritual energy. They're experiencing the spiritual energy potentially of a deceased human spirit or other type of spirit that's moving around, and they don't have the acuity necessarily built up to visualize that, to create the visuals of features and that sort of thing, to really see what kind of spirit that is. So the brain is trying to figure out, like, there's a void over there that's happening, and I'm going to make that out as a shadow. It's something that arises in consciousness, and it can even be caught on camera. Sometimes you'll see shadows moving about, and there's all kinds of metaphysical reasons for that, that are beyond. I might do another video on that in the future, but that are beyond the scope of this. So to kind of break it down, good and evil are complicated concepts that not everybody agrees on. Malevolence, meaning intentionally causing harm for pleasure or for gain, with complete disregard for other beings, other sentient beings, that does exist. The vast majority of negative experiences, and again, that's a value judgment. Negative experiences are a value judgment. I could have had paranormal experiences that I've described even to paranormal investigators that I thought were funny, and they were like, wow, that's frightening as heck. So I didn't take it as a negative experience, but they did. So that negative is an opinion. It's a viewpoint. So it's hard to label things as negative or positive. Harmful, we could look at, is it causing health problems? Is it causing set your house on fire? Is it breaking your stuff? That sort of thing. We can look at harm and help, and that's a continuum that we can look at. That can be useful to look at these spirits with. But I would really love for people to get away from black and white thinking. It's very limiting. Once you start putting things in these little boxes, it's either this or it's this, and there's nothing in between. And I would like people to recognize that spirits can be as complex as human beings, and even the same types of spirits have different personalities, different motivations, different things they're interested in, different values, different ways of communicating, different appearances, just like human beings do. So, I realize I've given kind of a non-answer to this, but in general, when people say, "Oh, do you ever run into really dark spirits out there?" If I had to answer that with a yes or no, I would say not really. Not really. But then I would tag on to that, in my experience, there are spirits who have harmful effects on human beings. Very rarely, there are malevolent spirits. Here's the thing. In my belief system, underneath it all, we all have the same spark of divinity, or we all have a spark of the same divinity. And that includes, quote unquote, demons, evil spirits, malevolent spirits, deceased human beings, animals, trees, rocks, rivers. Okay, so even within a malevolent being, one of the ways that I work with malevolent beings is to help them recognize that their source is divinity, and that what they're doing is unnecessary, because they can return to source. They can go back there. They can experience divinity without causing harm, and it is much more satisfying than anything they would get from, pushing people down the stairs or draining energy from people or causing sickness or anything, whatever else they happen to be doing. So there is, in my experience, there is nothing that does not contain within it divinity, because it wouldn't exist. And even within, unless you're Gnostic and you believe that the physical universe is a mistake or created by an evil demiurge, in most belief systems, in most spiritual belief systems, God or the creator or gods and goddesses created everything. So everything that is created comes from divinity and has within it the spark of divinity. So anyway, that is my kind of a long talk on are evil spirits a thing in shamanism? Do they exist in shamanism? Do we deal with them in shamanism? And it's a complicated answer, but I don't want to give a black and white yes or no answer, because I think that's too limiting. and in fact gives a really false impression of how the spirit world works. I hope that's helpful. Please subscribe to my channel. Come check out my website. Check me out on social media. I've got a lot of things going on. I've got I've got this channel. I've got a podcast. I've got an app, a free app that you can download and get access to all of my stuff. I've got a blog, so I never pass up a chance to talk about shamanism whenever I can. So I hope you stay happy and healthy, and I will talk to you real soon.